I would like to introduce to you two ladies that we are going to meet. It was supposed to be a workshop where half of us would have gone to the next venue and half would have stayed here, but we are going to change it slightly. So what we are going to do is to turn the workshop more into a presentation style session, right? So I am going to first introduce, I just want to open my phone again, not once my face, there we go. Right, so how it's going to work is that we are going to listen to Advocate Thembi, and her presentation is about ethics and integrity, upholding standard in professional practice. Now, Advocate Thembi is a distinguished legal professional with a career spanning over 2 decades. A native of Johannesburg, her journey in law began at the University of Zululand, where she earned her LLB. Known for her commitment to fairness and justice from her student days, Professor Bokako was a prominent figure in university politics. Well done. Becoming the first woman to serve as the Student Representative Council President, she went on to enhance her legal experience with an LLM from Vrije Universiteit in the Netherlands and an MBA from Regenesis Business School. Advocate Bokako's career is marked by significant achievements and contributions to the legal field. One of her notable accomplishments was receiving, let me just quickly get back to that, was receiving a prestigious scholarship granted by Professor Hendrik Jan de Roo to further her studies in international law at Vrije Universiteit. Additionally, her landmark rulings in the high-profile cases such as the South African Legal Practice Council versus Advocate Maliselela Daniel Tefo have set important legal precedents. Professor Thembi dedicated and excelled in her career and has been recognized by her peers, reflecting her influential role in shaping South African law. We welcome you, Professor Thembi. Please come to the stage. Thank you, Advocate Thembi. My mistake calling you Professor. I humbly apologize. We are ready for your talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies. I know there's some gentlemen as well. It means I'm supposed to be a professor. I'm taking it kindly. I suppose in future I will be a professor. Thank you, Program Director. I'm not going to be much longer. My slides, I think it's about 15 pages. Because of time, I'm going to skip some of the slides and then we'll just talk. Because the issues that I've raised are issues that are fairly pragmatic, meaning that it's something that we are exposed to on a day-to-day basis. Let me start by creating a scenario. I'll pick up from the comment that was made by one of the ladies. When she spoke, she said she's a member of the governing body. And then she said, I'm with my principal, and my principal has been advocating towards a growth and a development which is quite positive. You might be surprised as to why I'm raising this as an issue. I'll just make it as an ethical issue, in that it's good to have such relationships. but there's a thin line in the relationships that we established. There's a difference in having a social relationship or a personal relationship and a professional relationship. I'm making this example because it's at home. We are educators. There's been a number of issues within our schools where there's a lot of noise and conflicts between the managers and the governing bodies. I'm talking from the perspective of being a parent and what we observe. Some may be factual, some may be perception-driven. In that when we are in the space, for an example, I'm not suggesting that this is what is happening in your school, but I'm just making an example that resonates with your functions. In that when you tend to be in a professional space, you develop social relationship, you are bound to have conflicts. It's positive to have friends, but you need to guard against this relationship. Because in other instances, if you have to make decisions, it's easy to make decisions with a social perspective. And the meantime, when you do that, it's easy for you to compromise the process. We know for a fact that the governing bodies, they do have certain powers in making decisions. We know for a fact that the principal, for an example, is an official that is guided by your SACE principles, is guided by a code of conduct, is guided by government legislation. So the governing body has their own authorities as well. In other instances, they are separate bodies. So having to collude between a principal, maybe, and a chairperson of the governing body, it's easy to happen, and sometimes you might be clouded by a social relationship. I suppose a lot of principals could bear testimony to that. And you'll also find that a number of principals, they don't have a good relationship with the governing body because we tend not to understand our functions and roles. I know recently the issue of governing bodies, they were on the news, having to clarify what are their roles and their limitations. For an example, I don't know much roles of the governing bodies, except that they do assist in decision-making, perhaps in having to appoint a principal, HOD, or a deputy principal. You may find that they've got their own way of thinking to say who qualifies to be a principal from their perspective as the members of the community. You may find the government being the principal and other officials and from the district office having an understanding to say who qualifies to be a principal. So the governing body might say, but this is the member of the community, we grew up with her. She's been here. We have seen her growing. But the principal says, and the officials to say, but these are the criteria and minimum requirements. So if there's this social relationship, you're bound to be compromised. So you need to guard against relationships. It's good to have one, but remain principled. Because if you are not, then you're going to compromise the integrity of the school. You're going to compromise your integrity as a principal, because the meantime you make a quick decision to say we want to buy perhaps computers in school and the governing body has a budget. Safe to say, let's circumvent the process. Yes. Because I know somebody, and then the principal sleeps in the same bed with the governing body member. You tend to do things unprocedurally. And we know for a fact that within government, for you to procure an asset or any item, you have to go through the procurement process. Yes. So you need to be strong in understanding your role as official vis-a-vis as governing body members. a lady raised the dynamics, and especially KwaZulu-Natal. There's quite a number, because you need to check as to how the members of the governing bodies get to be appointed. Some of them is because not belittling any of the members. Some, they might be there because they're vocal in meetings, they speak louder than somebody else. Yes. And then people, they think, no, this person has content. Or he's got an intellect to be the member because he shouts, or she shouts louder. So you need to understand the dynamics in them having to see a professional and having to assess the professional. Because the aspect of emotional intelligence, my assumption is, as leaders, you should be having that. And the members of the community, they don't. They're only safeguarding the interest of the school. So you need to guard against that particular aspect. I just wanted to touch base on that. Let me make an example on issues of professional integrity. I'll make two scenarios. Recently, I was doing another matter. I want you to hear me well, because it's a story, so you need to pick up all the essential elements in it. There's a young man allegedly was involved in a car accident. He was from KZN, according to the papers that were before me. He was in grade 11, from one school, I think from Msinga, if I'm not mistaken. Then allegedly, the car accident took place in Soweto whilst he was walking towards Murafe. Then he was involved in an accident as a pedestrian. So normally in court, what normally happens, there's something that is called apportionment in terms of negligence, to say, did you cross the road when the robots were red, or was walking on the road, or was it the driver of the vehicle that was wrong? So we normally apportion to say there might be a mistake of a jaywalker or a pedestrian. Maybe we apportion 80 against 20. Now the lawyers will compile papers, will compile papers from the hospital, accident reports, if police were involved, the statement of the police. Now I'm identifying the key role players, the driver, the pedestrian, the young person being a scholar. Now, to cut the whole story short, the lawyers bring the matter to court claiming plus minus 10 million of damages. In particular, he was scarred, he couldn't work properly. You know what accidents, what normally happens. And then they were also claiming future lost income. So if one will have to pay that, the road accident fund, for an example, there's something that we look at, we call it collaterals. Collaterals, that's when you bring information that suggests as to why this person should get 10 million, others 5 million. Maybe somebody that has been employed, you get certain amount of money, depending of your allowance, your capacity, your earning capacity, the past and the future. So there's quite a number of players, the doctors, industrial psychologists, educational psychologists, occupational therapists, if there are head injuries, the neurosurgeons, quite a number of doctors are in place. And the last key one is an actual scientist that makes the projections in terms of calculations. So there's a young man, he's a scholar from KZN, they write the name of the school. So I'm saying, please show me the proof that he was a scholar, because the court works with evidence. It's not what you say. Give me evidence, give me the collateral. The collateral in this case being what? Being a school report. The doctor emphasized a lot this morning in terms of institutional memory and the data, capturing and keeping the data. It's very important. I don't know what you call the system that you use in having to keep the reports in your system. SASMs, yes, I think it's something like that. In that the reports are no longer the piece of papers where you use your head. Remember, we used to use Ellerins maybe being the sponsor and it's handwritten. Now it's computer generated, isn't it? So if you can't find it within the principal office, you can find it at the district, isn't it? So that's institutional memory. This incident took place now recently, I think 5 years ago, so that thing, obviously, my assumption is still in the system. So they come with a piece of paper when I'm looking through my papers. I see and say, but this cannot be the school report. When I look at it, I found another paper which was handwritten. For an example, saying maths, science, biology, Zulu, geography, you know how you structure them. And then there's another portion that talks about the marks. And in these marks, they talk about, let's say, first term only. It's not like your normal reports where you have first term, second term, third term, and then talks to the fourth term, which is an overall. Then I was uncomfortable because you need to concentrate to details, guys. That's integrity on its own, concentrating to detail. So I read my papers, then it emanated to say, I'm not taking comfort in that because there's no authenticity in this. Then I asked the lawyers involved to say, but please, can I get a report? No, but my lady, this is the report. And I said, but this is not the current school report. And it's signed somewhere, a teacher, there's a portion of a teacher, it's signed Mr. Ngubeni, there's a portion of a principal, it's signed Mkhize. I couldn't put face, I'm not quite certain whether are these educators, is this the principal? And the paper, there is no school stamp, there's no school name, it's just a piece of paper. So some of the lawyers, they don't concentrate much into detail because they're just quick to get the matter to court. They want this 10 million. Then I said, look, I'm uncomfortable. I don't understand how you qualify because this is not something that is right. The point of the matter, guys, you can see how many role players. And this child is projected to be the best, like scoring 5, you know, the highest. And is said to be an A student. And when a person is said to be an A student, there are projections in terms of the experts, the actuaries, which are going to say this person could have passed matric because the incident took place around November when he was just about to start his exams by thinking they start in October, but they said he was supposed to start his exams in November, which is a question mark. They said he's a good student. Then the actuary had to calculate to say the projection of this child would have passed the matric, he would have qualified to go to the university, he could have excelled in the university, he could have moved further to do honors or a master's. Then the projection says the bracket in terms of earnings, it's millions of money. That's how they calculate, right? So that is why they reached the point of about 10 million, given his age. And at the time he was 21, then I questioned the age 21. How come a grade 11 being 21? Then there's a story to say, no, he started late because he's from in the rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal. Look, rural areas are on top of things. It's not like we're in the Pundus. We're like any other system. So you see that there's an element of integrity on its own to say it's compromise. The elements of ethics from the lawyer's perspective, in that you need to have answers if I ask those questions. Now, I don't know if Khatebe, that is said to be an educator, is there or he just forged. I don't know if the principal is a real principal or is just fraud. So there's an integrity in terms of this. And if I did not concentrate on this, I would have given them 10 million. Then I had to call them back to say, look, let's deal with the collateral. You need to go to the educational psychologist. So you can imagine, educational psychologist is an expert. She was supposed to be the first to say, but I need an original, but they did not do that. Industrial psychologists, they were involved. I need an original, but they did not do that. Actual scientists, well, they rely mainly on the reports of the psychologists and the other experts. They don't need the original document. And then they do, positively so and honestly so, they do the projections. So the ethical issue here is that if I did not concentrate in doing my job, I would have compromised. I would have compromised a public purse. Now, I was like, I'm not giving you 10 million. As much as you think you qualify for 10 million, but I'm not, because I'm not satisfied. So these are excellent issues that you need to take into cognizance as leaders. You'll be confronted with this situation. So some of the lawyers, they don't know that they've got this system in place that keeps data. So my point goes back to what was said this morning to say how imperative data is, how institutional memory is. You can't lose a report these days. So that's an issue that talks to ethics and integrity. But now let me just go on and impact or go further in these examples. Let me bring it home, because ethical issue, we know it's a value system. I'll leave the presentation, there are a lot of definitions. It's not something that you can just master, but it's a way of life. We need to make it a culture to live ethically, because it's a choice. In most instances, yes, we tend to have our code of conduct, but it just has to be a moral issue. When you talk about issues of integrity and ethics, like I'm saying, it's a code, it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes a normative value. But where does it come from? It emanates from the Constitution. When you look at our Constitution being the supreme law of the land, it has a preamble. And you need to understand the preamble of the Constitution. What does it advocate? A human rights culture. Right to respect somebody, it's a right on its own. Right to dignity, it's a right on its own. And there are certain rights within the Constitution that can actually be taken away or be limited in terms of Section 36 of our Constitution, but there are certain rights that you cannot take them away. The right to education is Section 20.